Amazing, amazing work. So excited. Thanks for having me back. This is my chance to talk to my personal heroes and actually the cool kids. So cool that nobody wanted their seats in the front, but we're in the back of the class. But really, it's our chance to get to hear from you all masters about the craft and get to have a conversation. So I'm really excited to do that. Last year, we were here after the fires. This year, it feels like the world's on fire. In these trying times, the solidarity and community of our union of filmmakers could not be more important, as well as the work you're all doing as artists. And to take a lesson from Spike's amazing spot this year, it sometimes feels like we're all walking around in the cold, and that proverbial music that lifts us out is the connection with each other and the creative work that reminds us of our purpose and our power. So thank you to the directors up here, as well as Andreas and Steve, who couldn't come tonight. Thank you for your amazing inspirational work. And thanks to all of you for coming out to celebrate them and learn from their words of wisdom tonight. I have tons of questions, but also want you to feel free to ask questions of each other, because this is an event for directors, of directors. And I just want to start by saying I'm so fascinated by the way each of you has taken a brief by a client who needs to sell a certain product and really made it your own. And in the process, elevated the craft into storytelling that speaks to us as humans instead of making us feel sold to. And let's start with you, Spike, because I was referencing your timely and relatable story. And I know it's meant to be the consequence of a romantic breakup, and not the general feeling in the world right now, but I feel like great art allows us to interpret it for ourselves. This is a beautiful, emotional film about how music can take you out of your funk, even when you remain in that same physical world. And there's some similar themes to your groundbreaking spot with FKA Twigs, but also feels like a brand new interpretation. So tell us about what was that brief you got from the client and what was their goal and how did you layer your vision on top of that?
Well, thank you all for coming, by the way. This is a great turnout and we appreciate it. And I was lucky because I'd worked with Apple before and with Mal before. And so they called and asked, but they said before they write anything, they wanted to just sort of brainstorm with me. And so it was very, very open. They just said, we're doing something for AirPods. And so I just, I had an idea. The first idea was just sort of the flipping of the world, and then and they liked that. And so then I sort of brainstormed some more and thought about this being in a space where you think it's forever and being able to see yourself in the future, being able to just feel it for a second and giving yourself perspective that maybe I won't always be in this place. And maybe we won't always be in this place. And so that was the idea. And then I called them and told them, and they're great. They're really great to work with. Some of you guys are here, I think. And Tor, who does the advertising at Apple, he loved it. And on the second call, they said, "Who do you want to be in?" And I said, "Pedro Pascal." And they're like, "We love him." And he did it. And so it was very like one of these amazing things that sort of just flowed really. And there was at one point we didn't know, it was like, very complicated. And what was cool is that Mal and Apple, Tor and Brent from Mal were very committed to that idea, not just, just it being this, this requiring these two complete different worlds and sets. And so they were very committed to that idea and making it happen.
Amazing. And can you talk about the way you use color in the piece? It felt to me very Wizard of Oz, the way he kind of comes back to that same space at the end, but brings a little bit of the color of the fantasy world he had visited or the kind of surrealistic world. What were you thinking in terms of the color?
Well, I mean, on one hand, it was just like the obvious, like blue is sad and red is happy. So it was really just, and then, the idea of like getting to go to the Paramount lot and wrap the whole thing in color. And it was just that was just, I mean, it was like you couldn't take a bad photo on that set. It just looked amazing. And it was beautiful to shoot.
And can you tell us a little bit about your prep process? It looked like do you storyboard everything? Do you previs? Like, it was a very incredible set.
Yeah, usually I try to photo storyboard everything if I can't. If I can, if we can go to the location. So we just we just shoot in detail all the photo storyboards, and we're all the roles. And so if you look at the photos, it's like my producer Jory, or our AD Kate, or it's just all of us sort of are Pedro in the different shots, but just figure out the lenses and the effects and where these flips are happening. And so it's a very I started as a photographer, so I think I just that's the easiest way for me to to pre-visualize it.
Mm-hmm. And how long was the process? Like from ideating to shooting?
Probably from ideating, like it was to like delivering was probably 4 months or something like that. Maybe more. I'm not sure.
And that was the main thing. You were working on the piece for 4 months.
More or less, yeah.
Wow. And what about the choreography? Like, do you have a certain choreographer that you always work with?
I've worked with her name's Tanisha Scott, and I'd worked with her on a video, sort of live music video we did on the Colbert Report for Karen O. And Tanisha is amazing. She's based in Toronto, and so she came down and did that with us.
And did they have specific?
It wasn't the Colbert Report. It was the late night show with Colbert, not the.
Did they have music that they wanted to use, or did you select the music?
No, it was very open, and we traded songs back and forth, and everybody, my producers, and my editor Jeff, and Mal, and Apples, and so it was sort of a stew of trying to just find the right tone. And the first song, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of the artist. He's this young Spanish artist. I just found by going through. Apple, you can listen to like the songs that sound like the songs, and you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and just found that one. And then we listened to like 100 songs for the second song, and it ended up being a song my brother had done. So made it pretty easy. We just do it.
Kim, wow, the I'm Not Remarkable is a stunner that just makes you want to get up and cheer. I feel like you're the John Chu of commercials. Like, it's like a full-on Broadway production. It was like incredible. And also, I just loved how it just kept unfolding. Like, if you had done half of it, it would have been enough. And then it just keeps going and going and going and making the storytelling more and more interesting. It seemed like the writing in the song was kind of a guiding light. Can you talk about what they brought to you and what you layered on? And I just have to tell one story about Kim before you start, which is that I talked to her maybe 5 years ago, and she told me about how, coming from an agency background, she understood that the boards that you get from the agency are just the starting point. And I just feel like that's such a good thing to remember for directors, that in commercials, because I think especially people who come from docs or features, when they cross over into commercials, think they need to do what the client wants. And for you, that's just like the beginning.
No, totally. I actually remember, I'm sure many people know Danny Kleinman from London. And I used to work with Danny a bit, and he was super fun and very supportive. And when I told him I wanted to direct, and I was like, I'm getting these scripts and I don't think they're very good. And he's like, Kim, you'll never get a good script. They're never going to be good in your inbox. You have to put yourself into them. So he told me that way back. So I was like, okay. And you do actually get a good script every now and then. But it's, I always look to what I can bring to the script. And actually, funnily enough, with Remarkable, it was an excellent idea that came to me, but a little bit of a different idea. I've worked with, like you have with Apple, quite a lot, and specifically that team weirdly, one of the guys on it, I did, anyone that knows my work, a piece called For Sport England, 15 years ago. It was like the first piece of work that really I got to be me on. And it's the same creative on that, with another creative director who also she did a lot of the Channel 4 Paralympics work. So with quite a depth in, work for accessibility and disability. So, but when I got the script, it was actually a very different line, same core thought, but a different line. And sort of to go into the writing of the piece, we were talking about it and I loved the idea, but we didn't quite know what the tone of the piece was going to be. So it came in kind of as like, how do we use like a high school musical, which is not like, it kind of makes me cringe, but I like the concept of using a musical set in a high school, a kind of familiar genre, to kind of, use that space to communicate to young adults going to college and the technology that Apple had to offer for that space. And so when they came to me, I know them and I love them, and we started to talk about it. And I was asking Tim, who I work with, can I say the line that we had? And probably not, but it's kind of interesting in terms of what we're doing here, which they came to me with a line which is, I'm not special, rather than I'm not remarkable. And actually, at that point, we were looking at who should do the song. And we were kind of throwing names around. And one of the people that they mentioned was a guy called Tim Minchin. And Tim did Matilda, the stage show. And I'd fortunately worked with Tim on a big project for the Opera House in Sydney. So we were mates, we knew each other. So I was like, it's a complicated subject matter. I'm not special is quite a spiky line. Oh, like, how do we approach this thing? And I kind of knew if Tim wrote the song, I'd know how to direct it, honestly. And so Tim got the brief, and what happened was, which was really tough, was he got it, and he's like crazy bright, like genius. And he got it. Within the time he got it and the kind of time difference in Australia and here, we'd realised that we couldn't say I'm not special for various reasons, because it was polarising and it had some things that were challenging. And then I got a phone, and that was the Friday, and I got a phone call on the Saturday at 2:00 in the car with my kids from Tim. I was like, shit. And he called me up, as he does, and he's like, Kim, I've written the song. And I was like, brilliant. He's like, can I play it to you now? I'm like, yeah, fine, whatever. Actually, I made him wait 5 minutes and I went home. And I got home and I was like, okay, play me the song. And he's like, I'm going to play it once. By the way, I don't do commercials. I'm not going to make any changes. So if you like it, brilliant. If you don't like it, sorry. So I was like, okay, cool. And of course he played the song, and I knew it was a song. And I knew it was a song because the last line in that song was, at that time, it was, I'm only remarkable if everybody is. And so when I heard that line, I was like, he's unlocked the problem in this piece, which is I'm only remarkable if everybody is. And I knew it was genius, but I also knew that special had been killed. So I didn't know what to do. I was like, shit. And I sometimes call it like the Great Ravine in directing. I don't know if you two have it, but when shit starts to go wrong and you've got one foot on either side of the crack, and like it's opening, and all you can do is try and keep it together. So I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. This is like, I've already now, because he's going to write the song, I've agreed to the job. And this, so I didn't know what to do, but I was just like, I love the song. I think there's something around special, but I love it. Let's go. So it was kind of, I had to fudge that a little bit with Tim. And sorry, Tim, like I'll tell you, he kind of knows now. But then everyone fell in love with the song, but we couldn't use special. And so I was like, okay, Tim, can you, what do we do here? And I kind of knew that was the thought of the piece. So I was like, and Tim actually went away for a few days, and I kind of started prepping, like blindly prepping, hoping that this would come together. And actually, for some reason, an email didn't send from his inbox. So it was like 5 days. And to be fair, he went into his studio and he said he was banging his head against the wall for 4 days. He couldn't crack it. And then he came up with the weird thing, which is not remarkable, which is a weird phrase and a real mouthful, and a mouthful to sing. And I was like, I don't know. And then actually, I'm thrilled it's remarkable now. It's better, in a way, it just, everything about it is better. And it became not a polarizing piece of work. It became an inclusive piece of work, which was the point of the work. anyway, that was about the song.
So fantastic. And the beginning of it, when they're all getting to college, did you stage that and direct it? It looks so real.
Some of
Were
them,
any of them real from their?
no, but some of them did them on their own with their families, which was really nice. And that was kind of an idea. Like I like to plan everything, and then I never knew how to begin the piece. I actually did. I was like, we had the beginning of the song, and it kicks straight into "I'm not remarkable, I'm just doing my thing." And I was like, this doesn't feel right starting it. And it was actually during the shoot we came up with, and I won't take credit. I think it was the very good art director. I was like, oh, what happens with college? And I didn't know about these college acceptance videos before the job. And he's like, have you seen these college acceptance videos? And I was like, shit, that's good. So we then made that up. And actually I think 2 of them we shot and 2 of them they did just at home.
And in terms of how you worked with the song, I feel like one of the things I love in your work is you always have kind of like a 3-act structure in these spots. And the music kind of turns and goes. Did you talk to him about writing it that way?
Like Tim is brilliant, and we work really like collaboratively and well together. But he wrote that structure. I'm not going to take credit for it. He's a brilliant songwriter, comedian. If you don't know his work beyond that, it's phenomenal. And no, he wrote the structure, honestly. But I loved the structure, and actually, he puts me in a straitjacket. And if you know the Opera House piece that I did with him as well. He was in that one, and it was really hard because he wrote it and he was in it, and he's like, you have this line, and he's very particular with his wordsmith, and so he doesn't let me break things. But I broke out that central party bit. I just broke it out musically. We pulled it out, and we did the whole hangover. And when he first saw the cut, he kind of freaked. He was like, because he likes his beats where he wants his beats. But then he called me a day after and said, actually, I love that bit. So it's a nice relationship of push and pull.
And can you tell us a little bit about the production? It looks like days and days of shooting. It looks like a mini feature film.
I mean, it was done in 5 days, which it was a hard 5 days, I'm not going to lie. And not for any other reason than, I find it's hard to make anything. And, it's hard to shoot, to shoot lots of scenes like that is hard regardless of any situation. And our brilliant performers had varying disabilities, as you know, which is the point of the shot. It was, able-bodied and disabled cast in the same spaces. But just there are very practical challenges with shooting with people with disabilities. The performances were actually quite easy to get because they were exceptional performers. It was just things like Kitty, the lead singer. She has glaucoma. She lost her sight 3 years ago. And there was one scene where she did one take and said, Kim, my eyes, I'm in so much pain today. And I could get, I couldn't make her shoot more in that moment. Or, when you're shooting people who are deaf, they can't hear you, which is very basic. But you have to change the way you direct, and you direct through sign language interpreters. And there's just, so it was a big old tough shoot, honestly.
And did you have rehearsal time?
Yes. Yeah, we rehearsed everything kind of, within an inch of its life, actually. We just rehearsed. And I like to be quite free. But on this one, we blocked and cut everything. Because I knew, having worked with people with disability before, that people get tired. There's different things, there's different things you have to navigate. And so I wanted to be quite precise on set. Come in and this is what we're doing for this amount of time, and then I can let you go. So we rehearsed everything.
So you had 5 days, and then how many days rehearsal?
I can't actually remember. Maybe 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And what was the pre-production like? Like, did you...
Very quick.
I think it was storyboard everything?
I think it was 3 weeks from song to shoot.
Wow.
And actually not even song to shoot, from brief to shoot. Well, it was very tight, and we were like, how are we going to get someone to write a song in that time, let alone prep for the song? And thank God Tim wrote it in 2 days. So that was that was luck, honestly, with him. And then the rest of the prep was relatively normal. I guess the casting process was a little different, though I'd cast with the same casting director on The Greatest a couple of years before, so we had a bit of a shorthand, and she's wonderful with this type of casting. And I guess casting the crew on this was really important too, because I wanted to make sure the set had a warmth. So from the DP to everyone that was on the piece, I made sure they were empaths, I guess, that they were the right people.
And do you also work with the same choreographer all the time?
I don't know. I have done, so it was Ryan Heffington, who I know you've worked with and who I adore. And I'd worked with like 5 years ago, but we'd only worked together once. And then he'd just done a piece with a friend of mine, Autumn de Wilde. He'd just done the Florence and the Machine videos, which had a bit of kind of like wild headbanging in it. And I know Ryan's like a heart. And then when I saw that and Tim wrote the punk track, I was like, Ryan's perfect for this. And he was magic. So
amazing. Miles, so I see why the tech companies love to work with you.
Why?
Because I feel like you bring a humanity and authenticity to the performances and kind of humanize these brands that we don't always think about in that term. And I mean, the ChatGPT series is really brilliant and also haunting because it feels so human. And then you have this crazy reveal that it's inspired by a script generated by a machine from like averaging all human experience. So it almost feels like you're winking to the audience a bit in terms of our relationship with AI. And I just wanted to ask you how you, like what came to you as the brief, how you developed the concept. Did you create the scenes? Did they give you the prompts? What was that process?
Yeah, wow, a lot to unpack there. Yeah, like it came to me basically, honestly, my production company, Smuggler, had like seeded a relationship with Toby and Laurie, who have Isle of Any, this agency. And I met them for years. I'm like, we got to work together. And then this idea they had was like, well, we want the credits to roll at the end of a movie. And the credits are like all the steps you got to get to that moment. And they're like, it needs to feel like it's the end of a movie. And so they went with a person who's never made a movie, which I thought was funny. But yeah, like I honestly, the script came to me with like very, very simple scenes. And honestly, when I look at commercials, I really look at like effort to emotional ratio, you know, and like I want to go do something very, very simple that really connects. And so a lot of what I'm doing is just trying to get out of the way and like not let my process like be too flashy to distract from like the connection to a person. So yeah, it came to me like very, very simple. I have like a Spotify playlist called End Credits, and it's all the songs that I want to play as a music cue when I die. Because I remember like being in my basement and like seeing the Fight Club music cue and be like, holy fuck. And like, I just thought that was like the be all and end all of everything, like when those things combined. And I'm not going to embarrass you and talk about the things I saw of you when I was young, but it's like sitting next to Jesus. But it like there are these moments where you combine images and music that are together that really just like pulled me. So they were like, we want to have these moments and have this music cue that hits, and I was like, that sounds like a banger. But then the scenes were really hard. It's like, you know, it's OpenAI's first commercial really, and they're like, all right, she's eating pasta, and I'm like, that's it? And they're like, yeah, make the best commercial. And I'm like, okay. So like that kind of pressure I really, really love. And so like, I think from a storytelling standpoint, I love like intimate epics, you know? So I really like this idea of like starting on someone's face and connecting with them, like dropping into a scene. So like writing a little backstory, getting the actors involved into that. And then just like you're coming into the scene as you're pulling out. And I was like, okay, how are we going to find this like epicness? And, my UPM, Yanni Papadopoulos, who's hopefully here, who's a legend, he was like, well, I got this little drone. And I was like, great, let's bring the drone out. Little did he know, I was later going to be like, let's put a 35 mil camera on the drone and let's do it that out a window. So it turned into be like a little bit of a technical challenge on those shots, but it was so fun to create like these really intimate scenes that then had some expanse. And then, you know, there was a really strong request to like end the character in the middle of the frame. And I don't really think too graphically. So that to me was like one of the most challenging things. I'm like, okay, well, how do I have this blocking that feels natural and connect with them with also having something so graphic in there? Because those things like kind of are difficult in my mind. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
So the drone in that shot, the whole thing in the first part is shot by a drone, and then it comes outside and it's all practical.
Yeah, so basically that was the first one we did. And so I really wanted to do all of them like this. And so I I like heard about it being done, but he put basically a Arri 235, like a small 35 mil camera onto a heavy lift drone. But then I was like, of course I wanted like, custom Panavision lenses on it. And it was like being a bit of a dick about things like that. And then I was like, those shots where you like go out a window always have this seam, and the seam is so contrived, and the seam is usually like it goes out and it like attaches and stops and then moves. And I was like, we just have to have it move out and not lose anybody. So then I came up with this really dumb idea of like putting the camera on a gimbal, moving it through the kitchen, and then going out the window and building a platform out the window so we could pass the camera through the window and then attach it to a drone and then make it fly off. And that was the hope. And then we were like in the most stressful week of production, and there was so much pressure, and my girlfriend came to visit me, and we were going to Malibu for the night. And Stephanie Bruni, my producer, called me, and I'm sorry, I'm going to do your accent. But this is a new relationship at the time. And I get this phone call in the car, and it's like, hi, it's Miles, or hi, Stephanie, or hi, Miles, it's Stephanie. And I was like, oh, hi. She's like, so we have a bit of a problem. And I was like, okay, what's the problem? She's like, the drone exploded. And I was like, and so my girlfriend's there, and she's like, never seen me stressed. Well, probably, but I was trying to not be stressed. So I was like, oh, that's totally cool. Yeah, fine. We'll like figure this out. And then I went to this like place in Malibu with her friends, and all these women were in a sauna, and I was like, I got to get on a Zoom. And I live in New York, so that's like really unusual for me. And then basically the next day we went and did all this testing, and that to me is where like the safety and all these things come into play. So like I have to also shout out my two ADs, George Nessis and David Webb, on these spots, because I come to them with like really, really wild ideas and pushing them, but it's like also there's big safety issues. And everyone wants to please. So it's like that. We went to like the edge of something very, very unsafe, and then we went back to where it's safe, And so that's where like I show up to a test, and I'm with my AD, our UPM producer, and I go, okay, like let's just break it down and what we can and cannot do. So that ended up being like we pulled the gimbal through the window, and so I felt like the most like usually the VFX-y moment was like handled, and we walked on this like crazy scaffolding that cost like so much money. And then we shot the scene inside, and I personally don't, everyone's like, what are they going to say in the kitchen? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, well, they're going to like talk. And then that like makes everyone super happy when you say things like that. And so then we were like doing these takes, and it has to like fit in this time. I got to like connect with the character, create the story, get out the window in like 12 seconds. And then our production designer, Flo Martin, I was like, okay, this is way too long. She's like, all right, let's just reimagine the kitchen, and where the sun's setting. So all these commercials are done. Those ones are all done in one day. So you like get there, block it, figure out what the hell is going on. And then the guy was like a friend of the casting director's who's like never acted before. I was like, you're perfect. Because he was like, oh man, I'm here. And I was like, this girl's going to like totally freak you out. It's going to be awesome. So then you just start writing it while you're shooting it. But then, you got to like get outside to get the drone shot before sunset. And so then it's like all the stress and all the pressure. And that to me is like the most fun part, because you're trusting like a moment, and you're trusting the presence of a moment. And to me, that like gets me so like jacked up. I don't know. Maybe that's masochistic.
So the dialogue was unscripted, or you wrote it on the day?
I just create a scene, and I go like, it's like, it's not like a scene that has any continuity with anything previously. So like I'm looking for like a lightning take. I don't really care about getting better, So like to me, I think directing is like lighting a match and being like, does that trigger you? It's like a little bit like therapy. You're like, what about this? And like, or you like pull them over here, and you're like, what on this take? And you're just trying things to stimulate something that feels real. And that to me is like the most exciting part, because there is no science behind it. You can learn like a lot of tools. Like I just listened to a lot of filmmakers do a lot of different things, and you get your toolkit, but it's like at the day you're like, that didn't work at all. And then you're like, gotta figure it out, and everyone's just staring at you. But, but ultimately like that was also a wild one, because we were like editing on set. They're like, this isn't working. I was like, I know. That was like the most fun. But I think it's like, that to me is like what's exciting. I think like the best thing is like, I'd rather have like, each of these spots, like I think it was take 21 on both and take 23 on another. And like, I remember Derek Cianfrance had this line. He was like, like making films is like making pancakes. Like the first pancake's kind of shitty, and then you make a second one and you get a little better. And it like takes the stress off, because I don't want to, like 23 takes is for me a lot, but it's like when you're doing a one take spot, that kind of became a bit normal. But yeah, to me, it's like I like the feeling of like reacting to what's working as opposed to like imposing some idea I have on it, because like someone could have had a stomach ache that day, and like for some reason she's not as funny, but in the audition she was so funny. Like Joji, the guy cast in that Santa spot, like we found him in Tokyo and he was like kind of out of it in the audition. It was like 4 a.m. and I was like, this guy's like a little intense, but he was so like had such a good vibe. And then we bring him and he was like perfect. So you never really know. So I'd rather just react to like what's there than like preconceive somebody.
So the camera work and the environment you tested on a day without any of the talent, and then you did 20 or 30 takes on the day?
No, we showed up and did it all in one day. Like to me, like Spike, I like work very photographically. So like on location scouts, I just take photos, and often those photos become the images that I create, because I'm like, oh, it'd be so awesome if like that happened, So like it's very photographic. And then to me, like you go and block the scene and you put people in there. I think what happens in commercials so much is people forget to like block a scene. They get so obsessed with a shot and they go, no, let's actually like see what a person would do. And then let's create a shot around it. And I have like a whole bunch of shots in my brain. And then you go, okay, this is starting to work. But at the beginning, it's like, it's a little messy. And then you start to like refine and get into it. And then once like what I want to do on a day is like have all the technical stuff done. So we are going to that location many times. We're talking about it with like all these different key people. We're not just like showing up and winging everything, but like we're very technically precise. So then on the day you're hopefully just worrying about performance. But we didn't bring gear the day before and do any rehearsals. It was really like, this is what we're going to do, and let's go for it.
Amazing. And the single shot, I love that. And I feel like it also helps kind of ground you in the human experience and make you feel like you're there without having that mediation of an edit. And it was so amazing in adolescence. And I feel like here it kind of keeps you in the scene too. Was that in your original brief, or was that something you came up with in the treatment or later?
I think it was an original idea. There was like talk about an edit. There was always like, well, should we just like do a cut? And like to Toby and Laurie's credit, they're like really bold. And they're like, no, like those guys were pushing me all the time, which was super nice. Sometimes I feel like I got to be the spear of like pushing everything till things are exploding. And they were like kind of helping me. And I was like, wow, this is like dangerous, fun combination. But yeah, I feel like, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was like a one-shot idea at the beginning, but to me, it's like that just seemed like such a fun challenge to like stay connected with people. And like, it's really hard because they put the scroll in like 12 seconds. So you have like very short amount of time to like tell a story.
And were you thinking about any subversive commentary about AI?
About AI, Daddy? I felt like, to me, like, to be honest, it's like what's so interesting about like, working for them is like, I use that tool all the time, but I feel very conflicted about it. And I think it's like anything, it's that these systems are going to put like rocket fuel into our culture. And we're kind of already seeing what like dumb AI has done to our society in the past like 15 years, which has been pretty scary, but has some beauty to it. So it's like, I felt conflicted because I was like, oh, I use ChatGPT all the time as like a research tool and things. But then I'm like, so it does enable people to go after what they want, but it also is like a tool that we don't really know the repercussions of yet. Yeah, so like, that's there's definitely conflicting thoughts in my mind. But I didn't have any subversive things. I was like, not the place.
And do they work? Is it direct to client with them, or did you have an agency?
So yeah, Toby and Laurie, they were at Droga for years and they started their own agency. So it was really nice. I think what you're also talking about with like Tour at Apple is like having like 2 creative directors and a very small team. There's like a really, really small synergy. So when you're working on set, like they're just right here and we're all just jamming and talking about it. Or, oftentimes what is really challenging in some commercials is just how many people are there. And it's like, so it's really just like, how does an idea or how does telephone tag not break down an idea? And how does it become very simple and clean? So they were working for OpenAI, but OpenAI also had their own creative directors, and like a new creative director got hired on their second day and showed up. So it was kind of like they were like starting up a big company and we were like along for the ride.
And those are so simple, and the meta one is so much more complicated with all these different characters. And how was that prep different? And did you come up with the whole garden gnome thing? That was really funny.
That was Droga's idea. That was their idea. It was quite good. Yeah, I think that like, you know, we did a series of spots with them. The one was like a vignette thing. It's funny because like when I'm talking about simplicity, I find that spot so hard. I just go like, whoa, there's so many scenes, and like, how do I create an emotional through line, and like, how do I connect these people, and how does it not get lost in an edit because there's like 10 billion ways to do it. Where like in a one shot, I'm like, that's the take, like in out, and that's like fun for me. But and then like in the narrative one, like the Secret Santa one, that's just like a fun narrative, simple spot. So that just feels like really effortless and like simple to do. And, you know, you're trying to make the scenes as like simple as possible. I think like that was like a 90, but we made like a 220. It was like the dominant cut. But it's just like fun to tell a story like that. And it's like they had a great idea. And honestly, like going to that agency, they were just so like supportive and really like let me do my thing. And it was just, you know, when you read that spot, it could be like so cute or like so corny and like really heartwarming or really cheesy. And it's like that spot is like one of the scariest ones for me because I'm like, there's such a fine line of like, oh, this could just be like, but then it's all about like nailing the casting and getting the casting perfect. So that was like, you know, we were looking in London, LA, New York, and we found him in Tokyo. So it was like, you know,
wow, you cast in all those places?
We were just we were casting in LA, New York, and London, and our London casting director found Carmel Cochran found him in Tokyo, and he turns out he like lives in New York, like near me, and like, you know, it's just like one of those really weird things. But he just had such the right vibe for it, and it was also like hard because you're making a spot about someone stalking somebody, and they're like, "Don't make it creepy," and I was like, "For sure." That's never, no one's ever done that.
How many days shoot was that one?
That was like 2.5. I think that like vignette spot to me, like the one that played like the Thanksgiving one, that to me was like very, very hard. It was like, you know, it's like 17 locations, and you know, we did 4 spots for them, and so 2 are coming out. So it was like a big package with a lot of different spots. So the vignette one was like their first one, but it's like, you know, 17 locations, so many characters, and that to me is like a really, really hard puzzle to like figure out like an emotional through line. But yeah, that was like, I think we did like 3.5 days on that and 2.5 days on the Santa one.
So it seems like I want to ask you guys about what kind of stories you're attracted to, because it seems like, I mean, Kim, your spots this year have this theme of kind of empowerment and people who are discriminated against. And Spike, it seems like your theme is also a continuation of other work, like the monotony of everyday life and how you kind of transcend that, and these fantasy worlds that transform that, are creative worlds. And Miles, you have these spots that human connection kind of links in different ways. And I'm just wondering, do you all turn down a ton of spots to get to select the ones we've seen tonight? Or are you working on others throughout the year and then these are the ones that rise to the top? Like, how do you choose your work and what are you looking for? Do you want to start?
I think I'm just looking for something that excites me, that seems, that makes me laugh, or I think is funny or moves me, or that maybe I don't know how to do and I have to figure out how to do it. And just something that is going to turn on some part of my brain that I want to turn on.
And I assume you turn down a lot of spots.
Yeah, but we did one right before Christmas, so we did 2 last year.
So yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of spots. To answer the question, because I think it's obvious on those 2 pieces. I actually did 3, maybe 4 pieces last year, and those 2 were specifically in the US, I think. And they were, I think you're right. They were both about something. They were both about people that, I guess, as you put it, were discriminated against. I guess it's worth talking about the Nike spot in that respect, because we've talked a bit about Remarkable. So the Nike one was interesting for obvious reasons. It's about women in sport. And when I first got that piece, I'd just done another Nike job, so I was kind of close to the team. And I think there's a theme here. We like working with the people we like working with, and then I know for me, I make my best work when I like the people I'm working with. So I really liked this group of people, and they had another project which was it was for the Super Bowl. That's right. It was for the Super Bowl. It was the first time Nike had been in the Super Bowl in like 27 years. And it was a big deal to have female sport in the Super Bowl. So I'm like, of course I have to make that sport. Like, no, like that's absolutely my kind of thing. And so they sent me a bunch of ideas actually very early on. And I remember sort of like going through the different thoughts, and they were quite loose. And there was this one line in pages and pages, which was, "You can't win, so win." And I was like, whatever you do, it has to be that. Because just as a woman in this job, in the world, "you can't win, so win" is a very relevant line, and something that I felt was, it was something I knew. I knew and I lived, so I felt very close to that. So I started to talk to them, and actually it started just as one line. And I was like, what if you wrote, "You can't do something else"? So something. And so it just started as a conversation, actually. And then so we both went away and started to write lines with that. And then it built into the job.
So you really wrote it?
No, I didn't. I wrote it they wrote the line. I just identified the line. And then they wrote, you can imagine the acres of lines we wrote on that. And what we were trying to do, and it was quite hard actually, because we were trying to find lines that were relevant in sport, but that had a universal quality, so that they weren't just sports related. So Caitlin Clark, I think we wrote at one point, or they wrote actually, "You can't shoot from the logo." So shoot from the logo. But that became just a sports line. It wasn't relevant to the female experience, which is a broader thing. So hopefully, and I need to rewatch it now, but the idea was that the line should resonate for the women in sport as well as women in life.
So good.
We wrote and wrote. We were writing before, writing from the beginning. We were writing on set. We were writing after. It was just the lines kept changing. Someone would come. One of the athletes would come and maybe do something slightly different. So we'd shift their line. So we were always just trying to make it work for each individual as well as the greater.
And did you prep that differently because of the archival? Did you choose the archival first and then?
Yes, actually, because also I'm not American, as it should be obvious, but I knew some of those athletes quite well, but I didn't know them all. So I had to do a lot of research to find out, because what I wanted to do, and actually just one interesting thing was, when in that deck actually that I got, where that line was there was also a bunch of imagery of male athletes and how they'd been shot through time. Lots of Nike work, actually, great Nike work that had been shot. And really what the team had cleverly identified was how investment hadn't really been made in shooting female athletes, very much at all, at that point. And, it goes on. But there was this brilliant shot of, I don't know if you know Bo Jackson, who was the footballer and the baseballer. And there's this shot of him that Nike had in their archive, which was he has got the pads on his shoulder and the baseball bat. And it's a black and white shot with a mottled background. And he's looking to camera. But it's also really sexy, And I saw that shot and I was like, I want that line and that imagery. And that was the germ of the piece. And then that was the inspiration for all of the photography. And then we try and write for each athlete. So I'd research the athlete, look at what their kind of character was, what their thing was, and how they moved. And that's when I just started to select archive. And most of that archive selection is the stuff we used in the cut. Because Sabrina, she'd always do this, this gesture. So in the end, I love an action cut. It's really satisfying. So I just find those little actions, and it also gave me something to work with the athlete on set, because athletes don't want to act, they want to do their thing. So I really needed to know their vocabulary before they came on, and then I could kind of work, it's really simple stuff, it's a runner or it's a basketballer, but really understanding their character and trying to find, I'm not sure I got to that Bo Jackson singular image, but it was an inspiration to try and find a concept or an action that defined the athlete in that moment.
And did you have an editor on set to make sure your match cuts were working, or?
I had Liv, our edit assistant, on set, but my editor, he kind of refuses to come on set. He's quite annoying. But he's right. He's very right, because he likes to look at the rushes, and I know how to match cut. I don't need him there.
And Miles, what kind of briefs are you, what gets you and what do you turn down, and how do you pick these?
Damn. I don't know my turn down percentages, but I don't know. I think it to me it's I get like pretty obsessive about stuff. So if I'm like really obsessed with some kind of tone, then like as soon as I'm done that, I'm like, fuck, I really gotta like go somewhere else right afterwards. It's also like I spend a lot of my personal time writing. So sometimes you're like in the middle of something and then something comes in and it's like, it's really kind of like an ebb and flow, I feel. But like to me, I think like I can only do a certain amount of pieces because I lose my ability to be good. Like I'm bad, like 100% I think I'm pretty good, but like 80% I think it's pretty bad fast. So like I need to really like actually care and commit, because I think what you said earlier, it's like I started working in Canada, and my EP there, Harlan OPC, was like, you aren't going to get a good script. And then I was like, okay. And I always felt like, I remember I started like working, it was like after like all the financial crashes and all that stuff in like early 2011. And like everyone's like, this is over, like you're never gonna get a job. And I was like, okay. And that was like kind of really helpful to like start like that, because I was like, all right, well, like nothing is gonna come to you, so you have to like take something and just like make it great, and just having that ethos. And then like getting good scripts is really, really nice, because then you're just plussing it. But I feel like, yeah, I just want to make sure I'm like actually there to show up and like do my work as best I can, because if I burn myself out or like do too many, and I've experienced that where I'm like, well, I'm actually not so good here. So to me, it's really like, where's my like battery level at the time? And like, can I go and like do something and do it really fast and really intensely in like 3.5 weeks? So yeah, like I think I look for, I think we have a lot of like shared mutual collaborators, and I feel like they all show up being like trying to make something great. And, I don't really work with people who are like, oh, I'm going to go do a commercial and like whatever, like send me wherever. My friends are like, what if we did this? And like the job hasn't even started. So I also feel a responsibility for like everybody who's coming, that like I'm going to really give it my best. And so to start there, when I see something, I have to be like, oh, there's a germ or a seed of something that I really, really love here, like Spike was saying. And I think that to me is like, you got to be able to know that you can make something really, really good there. And sometimes it's like really hidden. And you were saying about like the valleys separating. Like I think when I go into a job, I like, maybe it's because it's like I'm over therapized, but like I really think about needs. I'm like, okay, like what is the need of the agency, and then what's the need of the client, and like what is my need, and what do I feel like I can do here? And so on calls, I kind of like try and understand what the agency is trying to do, but then I'm like, just please tell me the dirty laundry now. Like, don't tell me we're on a tech scout and like this is actually the client wants it all red or yellow or like whatever. It's like, it's really helpful to know that they want this thing here. And it's really pragmatic usually, which I really like those feedbacks. Like, we actually need this. So then if I can find the needs of an agency, the needs of a client, or like at least interpret what the needs of the client are when I'm in a brief, then I feel like, okay, this is some path I could see forward of getting something that I think is good made within it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you guys, clarity of vision is sometimes hard to come through in a commercial. For me, as a photographer, a documentary filmmaker, I like having all the control. And so commercials, when I do commercials, I feel like compromise is a big kind of part of it. And I think what's really spectacular about all your work is you don't feel like there's any compromise. And could you just talk about that? Like, if you are able to just do whatever you want, which it looks like, or are you actually navigating that all the way through?
Yeah, I think that especially if you worked with the agency, or the client before, I think the first time I work with them, I always am skeptical of everything they're saying, and like, what are they thinking they were trying to make it look bad, and but I think that that's just my own like sort of I don't know, damage from working with movie studios or agencies that were challenging. But anyways, the more you get to work with the creatives, the more you're like, oh, they're making it better, and they're and then I think what Miles is saying, you need to know what they need, and then you need to know what the piece needs. And I always try to feel like I'm working for the piece and what it wants and what it needs. And but I think it's collectively our job, me and all my crew that we work with, is to protect that.
And are there arguments?
Arguments? I mean, yeah, probably. Yeah. How about you?
No, it's interesting, and I think you're right. I think we're all lucky enough to work with the same people several times. Therefore, there's a trust, and I like working with those people because I like the way they think. So it's a good start point, and it's a gift actually getting those ideas. But actually, what I try and do now, it's just as Spike was speaking, it made me think. For me, anyway, where I used to find treatments a pain in the ass, I actually think they're really important because if what I put on the page is what I want to make, and if you don't want to make it, that's totally fine. Like, it's fine. It really doesn't matter. But I really try and crystallize exactly what I want to do on the page as much, even though the job will evolve afterwards, but like some kind of intent. And like, as I said, I don't care. I prefer to not get a job rather than the wrong alignment of, of vision. And that's from client through. I always think like best client, it's all got to work. Like whenever there's politics between a client and an agency, it's always hard on the, I've found it's always hard on the director. So it's nice I try and provide a treatment that is very, very simple, hopefully, that everybody can get behind. And if someone doesn't agree, then let's not do it.
And is there a length, like are people asking for a specific length? Like I remember when we did Like a Girl, nobody thought anybody would watch something more than 2 minutes. And now these long pieces, like what do you think is the length of attention? Do people want something that will fit into reels, like 90 seconds or?
I think they normally, I mean, with our thing, they wanted a 30-second one and a 60-second one. And then I feel like it's always what does the story, the great thing is it can be the length of what the story wants it to be. And that seems to be the way it's.
I'm going shorter. All my reels like 9-minute spots. Now I'm like, I want to do 30s. Like I don't know. I think it's like about just like people's attention, and what it can hold. And I think that obviously when people watch a commercial, it's like they kind of have to watch a commercial. And I feel like I try to make something where it's like you actually like can connect to it and hopefully engage with it. So I don't know. I think there's like a little bit like also with sometimes there's an indulgence with like long commercials. I'm like, okay, but like you actually have to like really entertain someone, like give them something thematic and like give them something to chew on. So I think it's like it whatever it needs to be. But I definitely for a long time was just like making super long ass cuts and was having so much fun. But now I'm like, I love a 30 now.
Actually, it was interesting on the Nike one, it had to be a 60. And like I wanted to make a 90 and I wanted to make a 90 and I want to make a 90. And they're like, no, it's only ever going to be a 60. And actually that discipline is also really interesting because you have to edit, Whereas the Apple piece was, I think, 2:40 in the end, and it was going to be I thought maybe it should be 90, ended up 2 minutes song. Tim then wrote another verse because he had another piece of tech and then,
The Super Bowl spot was 60.
The Super Bowl was 60 and then the Apple one, we just kept, because we had so much tech to put in as well.
I'm getting signs to stop. I want to ask you one more question. Is that okay? I feel like as a guild and as creators, some of whom will be replaced by AI, some of whom's work will be enhanced by it. We're all kind of, and also just as people in our personal lives, we're all struggling with this huge impact of technology in our lives. And I spent the last 5 years working on this series called Social Studies about teenagers and social media, and just made a new spot about kids and AI for Lego. So it's very close to my heart. And Spike, I just have to say, like, you were so prescient on this topic and really out ahead of everybody a decade ago with one of my favorite movies of all time, Her, about a writer who falls in love with a bot designed to meet his every need, not unlike ChatGPT. And Kim, you showed us this really positive, amazing, heartwarming side of tech. And how it empowers accessibility, and you make the case so powerfully in your piece for the differently abled. And you also, Miles, have the tech as this like piece of connection. So I was just wondering if you could each talk about, from your unique vantage points, your own evolution with tech in your creative lives, how it's transforming your storytelling and in your craft, but also in the ideas of what you want to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've some friends are like working in AI and like startups and things. And I don't know. I think that my biggest, like I wrote like a weird AI sci-fi movie that hopefully I'll make one day. But like, I feel like it actually makes you more deciding what your context is everything. So like it can't see context, right? It can't see out of its box as well as we can. So you actually have to see like what is your human, everyone's like your human perspective, but it's actually like a little, like definitely just like an artist journey of like, okay, well, do I disagree with this? And do I care about this? Here's the thing that knows everything, that is saying this is what to do. And that's when you get that sycophancy effect and be like, oh yeah, like it loves me. And like, it's a fucking scary tool, but it's also really amazing. But it really forces you to be like really, really connected with yourself. And I think that's like, I don't know. I remember when I first started directing, people were like, I can't see you in your work. And I was like, I have no idea who I am. Like that's a fucking scary question to ask me. And now it's like, I don't really ask those questions to myself. You just go like, do I feel this or do I don't feel this? And like Rick Rubin's analogy of like, do I like this plate or that plate? Like follow that one. So I do think it's like like, I think when you're working with AI, it's like you're kind of like the pilot, and it asks more questions like who you are as a pilot, and you have to like really dig down because it's going to be able to make very good things that everyone can kind of make. So like, what is your thing that like gets made that hits a nerve? And you see this all the time with the film industry. Like no one's asking for a gay hockey show. And then it comes out and it's like, well, do you have any gay queer like sports movies coming out? You know, and like suddenly no one asks for these cultural things and it gets made and hits a nerve and we all respond to it. So I don't know. I feel also like in my generation, like I think we're a little complacent, especially with like guilds and unions and like labor. It's not really something we ever talked about because we just got thrown after like 2008 crisis into just like a freelance economy, and everyone's a gig worker and everyone's just like, I never have a job and like, what am I doing? And you're always like in this kind of perpetual fear state. And I think that like, I feel very lucky to be part of this organization. And I like came from Canada and moved down to America with healthcare. And I was like, this is so sweet. So I don't know. I feel like really like having worked for AI daddy companies, they know what they're doing, but to a certain degree, they are following something that's bigger than them at this moment. And AI is obviously this like black box, and you can never look inside, and it's always going to be that way. So it's our responsibility as like filmmakers, artists, or whatever, to be band together, and then we actually have so much power. And I think you can see that with like, you know, protest movements about like don't spend money on a certain day. Like there's so much power in just like not participating in certain things, or participating if you're going to do it in a certain way. And I think what I felt what happened in COVID was there was a really intense moment to like start doing some of these things, but there was so much fear that like the banding together didn't really quite happen, you know. And I could feel like corporations just being like, do it, and we're like, okay, you know. And I thought that was a little scary, and I would love with the AI stuff to band together more in the DGA and come together more to like make things that are okay or not okay, and how do we deal with this? Because it's happened like, you know, before industrializations, and like groups of people that get together and they say that's not okay, and then rules are made and we follow them. So I just feel like there's responsibility not on AI companies, but actually on us to be like, this is what's going to be good and this is what's not going to be good for us, because we can see with like capitalism, it's not necessarily going to like look out for our best interests all the time. So I think it's like a big responsibility for the DJ and the directors to like, you know, have a big discourse about it. And I think it like commercials is kind of the spear, you know, like things get tested in commercials all the time and slowly go into like film and TV. So I just think it's like a really interesting case to be like, how is AI gonna, like I was on a run, there's like the Equinox like AI ad next to their real photo, and like what does that mean for the photographer? You know, and I think these are questions that like should be born from people and not be born from corporations saying what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, I mean, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. I have three small things to say about it, but I'm really not the expert on this, which is anyone that knows me, when I go on set, I'm like, we've got 18 months left. You know, I've been saying that for quite a while now, but I'm like, I've got 18 months left of my career. Like, let's do something fun. So, you know, I don't worry, but I'm just aware that things will probably change. So that's one thing. The second thing is, this is kind of embarrassing, but I've never opened ChatGPT. I've never used AI, and it's kind of deliberate, like because like my daughter does for maths tutoring, and she knows how like, and I was just like, I'm really a really slow adopter, always have been. Like Tim, who I work with, made me get Instagram like a year ago because I was so behind. You know what I mean? Like I don't really care about that stuff. but I also thought, you know what? Because I'm a slow adopter, I'm going to hang on to that because I like thinking, I like writing, I write my own treatments, I like doing things myself. You know, so I kind of like, I feel like for now at least, I don't know where it's going, but like if to stay original, maybe like not asking ChatGPT where to go on holiday, like you'll go to somewhere everyone else goes, you know, might be good. So anyway, that's my second thing. However, people I work with use ChatGPT, so I'm not totally clean of that. So like the different voiceovers, the Nike voiceover, my editor, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Missy Elliott did this voiceover? Because we were thinking of who to do it and didn't know she was at Adidas at the time. And so we ran the voice. I didn't know he was going to do this because I don't know how to use ChatGPT, but he ran the VO through however you do it and put her voice on it. And it was excellent. And we then spent forever trying to match this AI voiceover, even with real people. Like we got real people to read, and we couldn't match the genius of this read. So anyway, they're my 3 AI things.
Spike, yeah, it's perfect for you to finish us off since you started us on this journey.
Yeah, I don't know. It is so massive. It's so massive just when you talk about AI, just the scope of it and what it is and what it is going to be, that it is hard to, you know, to say something that hasn't been said before. But I think the thing that I think artists need to be involved for this reason is that if this technology, like, you know, like the social media, you know, algorithm could either bring us together or drive us apart. And I think that by artists being more involved, we need to try to push it towards the first or the latter. I forget which order I said it in, but the one of being together closer. And also, Sam, what you're saying is like Miles, actually, you said it, that the idea of helping us get closer to ourselves too. And I think that these machines are going to be designed to do one or the other. And I think we have to try to push it towards one by being involved and being involved as a group.
Thank you. On that note, we're going to finish. Thank you so much for coming in person. You can ask them more questions in the reception. They'll stick around. And thank you. Thank you. Congratulations.